Hello, thank you for having me here. My name is Doran Schrantz. I'm the executive director of ISAIA in Minnesota. I first just have to thank you for inviting me to speak to the Institute on Medicine because my dad is a retired doctor and he has no idea what I do. But the fact that I was speaking to the Institute on Medicine was very impressive to him. So you gave me cred on the home front. I really appreciate that. So is it this button? Okay. So again, my name is Doran. I'm the director of ISAIA. A little bit about ISAIA. ISAIA is a faith-based organization. We have 100 member congregations in the Twin Cities up through St. Cloud, if you're familiar with Minnesota. And we are a vehicle for people of faith and congregations to work collectively and powerfully for racial and economic justice, or racial and economic equity. And we are also affiliated, I want to name, with PICO, which is a national faith-based organization, People Improving Communities Through Organizing. It's a network of organizations like ISAIA all across the country. So building off what people have already been talking about today, on some level what ISAIA and PICO are examples of structures for mobilization. They're vehicles that are specifically created for people to have agency and act through around the conditions that impact them. So what I'm going to do quickly here in 10 minutes, I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of a framework for how we have been on a journey of thinking about the connections between our work and health. I did not come into this work thinking I was working on health. Our organizing work wasn't, originally grounded in a health framework, but over the years we actually have been creating more of a connection of what does the work that we do have to do with health. I'm going to define community organizing and explore the intersections of health and organizing. So just to say one sentence about community organizing, I am glad to be here. I'm excited to be here. But there are hundreds and thousands of brilliant and powerful community organizations and community organizers all over the country. It is a huge field, and everywhere you look in every state, there's some kind of organizing going on if you decide you want to see it. So you all know all this, but I'll just remind you, these are some things that come from the health world that have been very inspiring to me and our work. So the social determinants of health are the conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age, including the health system. And this is the key line. These circumstances are shaped by the distribution of money, power, and resources at global, national, and local levels. So they're embedded in there as saying the distribution of health has a lot to do with the distribution of power. And public health, this is from you, but it's from 1988. So public health is what we as a society do collectively through organized actions to assure the conditions in which all people can be healthy. So this is a really complicated set of picture, but it was introduced to me actually by a man named Bobby Milstein, who's now doing a lot of work actually with Marshall Gans and Rethink Health. The thing that's helpful about this, it actually overlays some with Tony's slide on conditions and consequences. But the circle on this end, where it says underneath, the headline here is democratic self-governance. So these pieces up here are a lot of what we do. It's what our resources and infrastructure is focused on in order to either stop people from dying or mitigate consequences. But if you want to move up more upstream and take vulnerable populations and create a safer and healthy population, the argument here is that is very different work. And that work has something to do with creating the capacity for people to engage in democratic self-governance. So, and this is a simpler version of that same idea. If health is the conditions in which we live, then people can impact the conditions in which they live if they have the capacity to act on those conditions. So I want to say a little more about this idea of democratic self-governance, because this is the piece directly that begins to overlay with the conversation about what does it mean to build a social movement, what does it mean to build democracy, what does it mean to build people's capacity to act to impact the conditions in which they live. So this is work. I really appreciated what someone said earlier, the first presentation that said movements they're not the weather. They don't rise up. People don't naturally just come out and hit the streets. There is work that happens. And it's skilled work. It's work that people are trained to do. It's work that comes from hard-fought experience. There's craft, there are skills, there is a practice, there's a set of practices, there's dynamic conversations and arguments and disagreements that happen across the field of this work about what has to be most important, what needs to be at the center, what's most effective. It is work. And the reason I say that so strongly is that most often this work is not respected, seen, or visible. It's not in the canon, so to speak. It's something that is often taken for granted, that this work will just, that this will just happen, or people rise up. People are nodding. Okay, you're with me. Okay. So what is this work that is building democratic self-governance? So here are some pictures. And I put these pictures up because these are pictures that are familiar. I mean, you see pictures of protests, or pictures of people standing out holding signs, or pictures of movements or marches. And this is what we associate with a lot of this work of building the capacity of people to have democratic self-governance. So, but behind every single one of these pictures is months and months of infrastructure building, months and months of leadership development, months and months of strategy conversations. It is people playing significantly different roles so that the moment can occur in which public accountability can unfold. I often think about these pictures because we see these pictures and it often looks like people in rooms. People having meetings. And so the question is what's happening in the room where the people are having the meeting? What's happening? What's the discussion going on between these three people probably making a decision about what way we're going to go? And these are not people who are necessarily paid to be there to make a decision about what way we're going to go, but there's people investing in them to say, here's what it would take for you to be the kind of person to decide what way we're going to go. And we're going to practice that skill. A lot of these rooms, that's the kind of conversation that's going on. And this, I would argue, really is the heart of politics. This is people talking to other people about what they value. And at least in the political arena, this very basic building block of building politics, again with a small p, is also undervalued or thought to be easy. But this is the hard day-to-day work of building movement. People talking to other people. So, what is community organizing? Community organizing, and this is my definition, is a set of disciplined and strategic practices to build democratic and collective power to assure the conditions in which a community or communities can thrive. And there are three major components that I'll name today. There's lots to be said that are more than these three things, but a core of it, when I just said the building block is people talking to other people, is the amount of resources put into grassroots leadership development. So what those words actually mean is people do, especially in this society, at so many levels, do not wake up in the morning knowing how to responsibly behave in a democracy. It's a set of skills, it's a set of practices, it's something you invest in each other to do, it's something you learn. Grassroots leadership development really is the core of the core of the core of building any kind of long-term sustainable movement for change. Secondly, building democratic, accountable, sustainable, community-driven organizations. So grassroots leadership development does not happen in a vacuum. It happens when there is infrastructure to actually create the spaces in which people can be developed as leaders to have agency. It's a piece of, and what's really important about this unit of the organization, so there's the unit of people talking to people, and there's the unit of the organization. The organization is community-driven. It means it's powered by the people. People get, as part of that organization in and of itself, are exercising democracy with each other. So every aspect of a really powerful community organization is allowing people to practice at every level of it what it feels like to lead and to make decisions. And thirdly, the theory of change of this work is that power, or the ability to act, is what's most essential. meaning it's the thing that's missing. The reason why there is a struggle for resources of what is the scarce social goods is there's differentials in power. And differentials in power don't change because somebody else who has more power gives it to you. Differentials in power change because you take ownership and collective and community responsibility for negotiating for the power and the resources that you need. And when that infrastructure is in place, that's when change happens. It changes when the power dynamics shift. So you can build vehicles and infrastructure, and then as you get more sophisticated, all kinds of interconnected infrastructure that allows communities to shift power. So this is just another picture which says a little bit about what I just said, right? So grassroots leadership development powers the building of community organizations, which builds the power for people to have the ability to act. So, is this how much time I have left? I'm finished. I'm done. All right. So we've done it. I have a whole set of pictures here. We've done some great organizing. So I guess what I'll close with is I wanted to really hit on this point about grassroots leadership development. We do all kinds of great things in our organization that we talk about that are programmatic or public, and we have these public events like this, and we move on different issues. But what's harder to talk about or describe to people outside of our field is what is the essential nature of that work that happens between leaders and organizers and leaders that helps that leader begin to imagine the reality that their story could be at the center of politics. Their story, their values could be at the center. And that is a deeply transformative, and as a faith person, I will say, sacred process that unfolds. And until we can see that as the treasure at the center of all of this, no amount of policy change or even structural change will be sustainable until people are really the agents of their own lives.
I think we can understand why your father doesn't quite understand it. So next, Marta Arguello.